Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. My trees have grown a lot in spring, and today I'm going to be doing a lot of pruning. I'm going to start today by pruning my American elm. It's grown really nice and vigorous this spring, so you can see it's getting quite long and needs pruning. I've done a lot of root work on this elm, getting the roots sorted out so they're nice and radial and kind of tapering down into the soil and flat on the bottom. And it's really helping. It used to have a bit of reverse taper at the bottom, and now it's starting to thicken up at the bottom, and it's looking quite nice. I could still get the bottom to thicken up a bit more, but you know, it's getting acceptable now. A typical mature elm has the trunk come up, and then the branches reach upwards, fan out, and then they start to weep a bit at the tips. You get that kind of almost umbrella-shaped crown on the trees, or a flat top kind of crown on the mature elms you see in nature. So I've got the basics of that style set. It just needs a lot more refinement. So today I'm going to be pruning all the new growth back from the long shoots back to the first or second leaves. The only place that I wouldn't prune a branch is if I wanted to thicken up one part of the tree. So if I had a skinny little branch that I wanted to get thicker, I would leave that shoot to grow and help thicken up that branch. I'm going to start by shaping the upper canopy, and I might use the blue scissors on it to get that kind of rounded crown. Before I begin, I'm going to go in, check all my reference pictures on American elms, refresh myself with what a mature American elm looks like, and then I'll come out and begin the pruning. I was looking at the reference photos for the American elm, and the important thing is that upright branch structure coming off the trunk into several, multi-upright trunks or branches. And usually the canopy on them is fairly flat on top or slightly rounded, and they kind of have an overall square shape to them, sort of like that. If you see one growing in a field in nature, they're sort of that shape. So I'm going to begin by having a look at these upright branches and see if I need to grow any thicker. And, if I do, I'll leave the shoots on that one to grow longer, and I'll kind of prune back the rest. So let's have a look at that upright branch structure. Here's a view kind of looking up underneath the tree, and you can see I have, the start of that upright structure. I've got a really thick branch on the right hand side and then a very skinny one on the left hand side. So I want to balance that more. So I'll let the branches on the left hand side, just let them grow, and the ones on the right hand side I'll prune back, and that'll help equalize that balance in the tree, so eventually the two branches are kind of similar thickness. The time to do the detailed work on these trees is in winter when the leaves have fallen and you can see the branch structure really clearly. So right now, my goal is just to keep the tree in check, keep it compact, and as I say, try and balance the vigor if I can by selectively pruning some branches shorter than others. I'll start by getting the tree on a turntable. So now I can rotate it around as I work. So I have the front of my tree marked right here, and I'm just looking at it from the front. I've got a new branch under here that crosses the structure, so I'm going to remove that. It's a new shoot. Take that out. Another one I can prune back here, just to clear out that structure in the middle here so I can see it. There's another shoot going vertically up through the canopy here, and it's supposed to be a low branch, so I'm going to take the top off right there. I have a few new branches coming off the trunk. So here's the front view that you're seeing. So I kept this one to build up into the canopy here, but there's a new one on this side. I'm going to remove that. I don't want it. So off that comes. This low branch here, I'm going to keep the more upright part, prune off the horizontal branch coming off here. I don't need that. Clean up my stub. So even this thick, where my trunk divides into two, this is really thick, but above that they're fairly thin. So I definitely just need to let this one catch up. So I'll prune back the ones that are attached to the thick one now, keeping my best branches and pruning away the others. So there's the front view you're seeing. Yeah, I'll just start pruning. You know, just shortening all these new growing tips using directional pruning, trying to direct the branches in the direction that I want them to grow. There's a long one here I can prune back. So just shortening all these new shoots, taking the tips off them. If you don't shorten them, they all start growing over top of each other and you start shading out the branches below and you start getting dieback. So it's a good idea to shorten them back. You always want to keep some of the new growth on them. You don't want to take them right back again. So out the back here, I don't have a lot of foliage in this direction or branches, so I've got some thin whips that I've got to let thicken up, so I won't be pruning those. There's a branch here that comes out the front, and there's a good part to the branch, and then there's kind of a strange part that goes off to the one side. I'll keep it, but I better reduce it back. I don't want it getting too vigorous. I'd rather, you know, reduce the vigor on this part and keep the vigor on this one. So I'm going to prune this one back just to kind of help encourage this part of the branch to grow and not this one that's hanging down. So I'll prune that one back to here. Yeah, so that'll help balance that branch a bit. I want to encourage, you know, more upright branches to fill in the crown up top. So some of these ones that are going more horizontal are getting a little long. I better prune them back just to encourage growth to the upright sections. Just a little trimming to them. There's some more overlapping branches at the back here. I've got one that's kind of growing underneath another one. I'm going to keep my best branch and prune away the one in the shade, taking that section off of it. Take this one off here. Just get a little light to all these branches. Otherwise they'll just get weak and die out. Okay. Well, I think that's... It doesn't look very finished. There's the front of the tree that you're seeing. But it's kind of helped balance it a bit. And I think, you know, I'll get more growth on this side. You should thicken up this section of the tree. Help heal some wounds. And, yeah, keep developing this tree. It's... As long as it keeps making progress forward, I'll be very happy. And like I said, I'll do all the detailed pruning in the winter time when it's leafless and you can really see the branch structure. Then you can go in and start making major decisions on what to keep and what to remove. So I think that's it. I'll give it a good water and put it back on the bench. All right, here I go with the water. I've added a little bit of 20-20-20 fertilizer to my water. Just a very dilute mix. Here comes the choo-choo. So I'll just let that water soak in for a bit, then I'll give it another good watering until it flows through really freely. The soil was a little dry on top. Let that soak in for a bit. There it goes. Another watering. Okay, and that's coming out the drainage holes now. So that's nice. Watered nice and thoroughly. If this tree were in more of a refinement stage, you would let this spring growth harden off maybe another week. and then you could defoliate the tree, do the pruning, and let the new leaves grow in. But this tree isn't in a refinement stage yet. It's still being developed, getting my branch structure and thickening the trunk and getting my taper better and healing large wounds. I'll put the elm back on the bench and I'll get out the next tree. Now, what will that be? I think this one. I'll show you what I picked up at the side of the road. It's a turtle bench. Kind of strange, and it's got a lot of patina. You can see how the green paint's almost all the way off, and there's the belly's painted underneath, like that. Kind of unusual, but kind of cool too. So it needs a bit of fixing. Maybe I could put some braces across the feet at the bottom. But I thought, you know, if you're ever looking for a whimsical bonsai stand or something very unusual that has patina and looks old, well, something like this is perfect. So I'm going to try a tree on top of it and just see what it looks like. I'll try this birch tree, put it on Turtle Island. There it is. There's a look at a tree on top of my turtle stand. Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever use it, but you know, if I ever have an urge to having unusual stand, well, I've got one now, and it was free. The next tree I'll be working on are these red maples. It's kind of a bit of a penging here. It's just an aluminum baking pot with some feet attached to it. Nothing fancy. But these seeds are off the largest red maple I've ever seen in my life. And I just caught these seeds in midair as they were falling off the tree. So I planted them, and this is how they're doing so far. So today I'm just going to prune them back. They're getting a little tall. All right, I'm going to begin the pruning now. So I'm just going to shorten them back to the kind of first set of good leaves. So here's a shoot back here, and I'll prune it halfway between the leaf nodes. So just taking the tips off. There's a vigorous one here, so I'll prune that halfway between the leaf nodes there, taking the top off. Same back here. And that's pretty well got my pruning done already. I'll just check it over, see if I've missed any branches, but yeah, that's got it pruned back. I've got the penging all pruned up, and at this point in time, you're just building ramification, and then, you know, once you get them really bushy, then you can pick trunk lines and just continue refining them over many, many years. And yeah, you can see that it you know, originally when I planted these, they were just a bunch of sticks in a pot, and now they're starting to get a bit of branching, and that'll just keep improving. They'll get little canopies on them, and it'll start to look more like a miniature forest. The next tree I'm going to prune up is this Japanese gray bark elm, or Zelkova. It has very large leaves, but I've heard they can reduce, so I don't know. I've always had large leaves on this one. So what I'm going to do is prune these new shoots back and see, you know, the new growth should come in, and hopefully it'll have a little smaller leaves. All right, here I go. So I've got to just trace the branches up and look for flowing lines. So I don't want abrupt right angles or anything in the branch structure. I want everything to kind of flow nicely. So that's what I'm looking for, is good flow lines. So this branch kind of comes out this direction, so I should prune just above this leaf. So here I go. I'm taking quite a bit off. It'll be a very compact tree when I'm done here. The other branch, again, comes in a nice direction, so I'll take the end off this one. Taking that off. So that's got this branch here nice and compact and flowing. So I'll look at this other branch down here. I'll just take the tip off that one like that. The next branch up So it flows quite nicely, except there's one that sticks straight up. So I'm going to take it off to here. Taking the top off that branch. And then this side, not a lot that flows, but I'll take it off to here. Reducing that back. And then here in the apex, I've got a branch each side here, so I'll take it off here. And over here, similar, I'll just take it off here. So that branch divides from 1 into 2. Like that. So that's got a, you know, the tree back to a good compact tree. And hopefully when that new, you know, those new branches grow in, it'll be a little more developed, smoother flowing, a little more branching, and maybe smaller leaves. Okay, back on the bench that goes. The next trees I'll be working on are these emmer maples. So you can see how long they've grown. So I've got to prune those back. So I've got to find a place along the branch here. I'll go right back to here. Taking the entire top off that branch. This one can come back to here. Quite short. This one to here. This back one to here. This front one to here. And this one to here. So that's got that tree nice and compact. A lot smaller now than it was. The other one beside it, it hasn't grown too much. I think I'll just leave it alone. Let it grow a little more, a little stronger before I prune it back. So those can go back on the bench. The next tree I'll be working on is this elm. It was just growing in the backyard and I dug it up and started the bonsai process. So it's already been root pruned this year. So now I'm going to trim back the new growth. So I'll just prune it back, keeping a few of the new leaves, but pruning the shoots shorter. To there. I think it'll be a good looking tree in the future. The next tree I'll be working on is this black locust. You can see it's also grown very strong and tall. So this is the strongest shoot, this one right here. I'm going to prune, there's a stub on the trunk. I'm just going to prune that flush. I'm going to use my larger cutters. Like that. And then I'll start pruning it back. So I'm looking for a trunk line, I guess up to here, using this thickest one. And I'll prune it back to right here, off of the top. Then there's a branch that comes off here that can be shortened, I think, to here. Taking the tip off. Now there's a vertical shoot coming off one of the branches here, right here. That shouldn't be there. It's, you know, growing up into the apex. It's just a shoot that grew. So I'll take it right off. Taking that one right out. You have to be careful, there's thorns on these black locusts. And then there's sort of an upright branch here, and then there's one that hangs down below. I don't know if you can see it here. So there's kind of an upright branch, and then there's another one below. And I don't want one branch above the other, so I'm going to prune off that one that's hanging down because it's just too low and it doesn't fit in with the character of the tree. I want to build that upright style first, and then maybe have it weeping. So that one's going to come off, like that. And then there's one small branch coming off of that branch. I'm just going to prune the tip out, just to get some more strength into this part of the branch. Balance the vigor. So that one is done. That one's pruned back to size, the black locust. That can go back on the bench. The next tree I'll be working on is also an elm that I dug up from the backyard. And I think I dug it up maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So the trunk's getting quite nice on it. I'm going to prune it back, keeping it a little more compact today. So here I go. So I'm going to prune this shoot back to here. This one back to here. This one back to here. So all the trees I'm working on today aren't, you know, the most exciting trees or well-developed trees in the world. But I think you'll see eventually that these trees do turn into something really nice. And that's my goal of the channel, is to show progression. So, you know, I'll keep working on these little seedlings and that, and hopefully over the next, you know, decade maybe, you'll see them grow into really nice bonsai. That's my hope anyway. So I'll take the top off now, right back to there. So that's got that tree pruned up, except I think that one's too long. There. Yeah, so that's got that tree pruned up. That can go back on the bench. I'm going to finish the video by showing some updates to the trees. Let's head into the greenhouse for the first update, and that's my wisteria that I got off of David from the Toronto Club. And here it is, back here in the original pot it was in, and you can see it's grown up and up and up and up and up and up and up. So it's almost right up to the roof of the greenhouse. So it's been doing really, really well. Much better than I ever expected. I do have some cuttings that I took, this one right here, and it's growing very weakly, but it's growing, so that's good. And I think that's all I have in here other than weeds. Yeah, so the wisteria is doing fantastic. I never thought they would grow that much in just, you know, early spring. It's just amazing. Down here is a look at my cotoneaster. If you remember back in spring, I pruned off almost all the roots. It was quite a severe root pruning, but I did get a nice root base in the end, a nice flat kind of, the start of a radial root base. And you can see now that, you know, it's grown in really, really well. Just amazing. I'm very, very pleased with it. I think it's on its way to becoming a bonsai instead of a nursery tree. I'm still getting the occasional royal oak pop-up. So here's a new one right here. There's a new one back here. Just came up the last few days. Nothing in these pots at all. So I think I'm going to replant these pots with some of the seeds that some of the viewers have sent me. So that'll be coming up. Yeah, a new one in this pot over here. So I've got, oh, and another new one back here. So I've got lots of royal oaks on the go. Over here in this corner, I have the royal oaks that I started a few years ago, and they are just growing beautifully and thickening up. Amazing. They're just doing so well. My bog forest down here needs pruning again. It has grown like crazy. So it's really overgrown. Needs some pruning back. So that'll be coming up on the channel too. Over here is my smoke bush. It leafed out nicely. It's not growing with a ton of vigor yet, but it's hanging in there. So that's good. The Pyrenean oaks, they're all doing well. They're all looking very lacy now, the leaves. My juniper back there is doing well. The boxwood's doing well. The wild cherry is doing really well, or not wild cherry, the Romeo dwarf sour cherry, that's what it is doing well. Not growing with a ton of vigor yet, but you know, it'll gain vigor. I've got a Rosa Sharon, small one here that's growing well. A catalpa that's growing well. The boxwood that I dug up from the front garden, still alive, still growing, all kinds of new shoots coming on it. It's gaining strength. So with the small ones, they're gaining strength too. The Japanese black pine in here, you can see I didn't prune it. I just wanted to grow, you know, get a thicker trunk, gain vigor, and boy, did it grow. It's huge. The ash that I got from David back there, if you can see it, amazing. You know, it was just a stick in a pot this year, and now it's a stick that's been root pruned, and it's got branches now on it. So amazing progress in 1 year with this tree. The other big ash I dug from the front garden, well, yeah, it's growing with vigor and then some. It's just like taking off. It's hitting the top of the greenhouse. So I wasn't going to prune it this year. My goal was just to get those roots, you know, reestablished after digging it up from the front garden and root pruning it. I thought, well, I'll give it a year to grow its root system back. But look at the growth on it. So I think it has plenty of roots. I'm just amazed how strong this growth is. So I'm going to have to prune it back kind of midsummer. It's just going to reach the roof of the greenhouse and just too tall. Outside here, my flat top pine, the canopy is growing in really nicely, the new shoots. So it's looking, you know, more like a flat top pine now. It's looking quite nice. The Avatar Grove is looking really, really lush. That is going to need work soon. My large forest, it is growing back in. You can see a whole bunch of new shoots on it. And then even the tops where I, you know, severely needle plucked and pruned, it's got all kinds of new shoots that are starting to grow in now. So that's exciting. So yeah, it's the second flush of growth is going to be appearing soon, and I'll have to give it a prune when that starts extending. My pine tree on Shenny's Rock is doing super. A lot of these candles I pinched and they're still growing really long. So they could be, you know, needled, or not needle, trimmed with scissor trimmed back to get them shorter. There's a lot of new vigorous shoots on the apex there. I'm rethinking this branch. If I look at the front of the tree, you know, this branch kind of hugs the terrain, but I'm thinking if I got rid of it, I've got one branch out here from the outside corner here. Get rid of that. I've got a nice apex going. It won't look quite as, I don't know. It'll look more like a typical tree rather than having this branch sweeping across it, but we'll see. I haven't made the decision yet, but I'm leaning towards that. Even though, you know, it's taking some of the character out of the tree, I think it'll expose the trunk nicely, and I think it's going to be a good looking tree no matter what I do to it. It's starting to develop really nicely. We had that big windstorm blow through, and I had one tree tip over in the storm. I hope it's okay. Let's go in and look. So here it is. It's my Pinus artificialis. I haven't set it back up yet. I'm scared to look at it. Let's see what it's like. Oh, no damage. Wow, amazing. Yeah, luckily these resinous type branches on this tree are quite flexible. So yeah, that didn't get damaged at all. I did have one casualty this year, and that's that European buckthorn, the one that Zinn boxed up for me, and it just never came into leaf this year. So I don't know, it got the same winter treatment as my other buckthorn, and I'll show you that one. So over here on this bench you can see the large European buckthorn. Quite the canopy on it, so that one's going to need pruning soon. Do some branch selection, see what's alive and what's dead, and sort it out. But yeah, that one really came back nice, which I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't lose the big one. The Osage orange forest down here, growing really well. That needs a prune soon. So that'll get a separate video. I didn't want to throw it in with today's video because, you know, it'll take a more detailed approach to pruning these ones because they're in a forest. But yeah, it's looking really healthy, looking really good. I really like this Osage orange forest. I think I'm going to prune one more tree today, and that's my paperbark birch here. It's growing really well, and I'm afraid if I don't prune it, it'll just dry out too quickly because it's in a fairly small pot. So that's another thing. If you find your trees are drying out too quickly, so, you know, if you go to work in the morning and they're totally dry by the time you come home, then maybe you've got to take some of the foliage mass off them, defoliate sections of them, prune them back so they're less vigorous and they don't need as much water. So that'll help you get them through the day. So let's get this on the bench and we can start pruning the last tree of today, my paper bark birch. All right, here I go with the birch. So I'm going to start by reducing the height of it, trying to find a suitable place to reduce it back. It's way too tall. So I had cut it previously here. There's a stump right in here where I pruned it last, and then a new branch grew up and formed the new apex. So I'm going to keep part of that. I think I'm going to take off the top right here. So I'll come in leaving a little bit of room for dieback, and I'll take it off right here. So here I go. There goes the top of the tree. Then I'm going to prune all these branches back. So here. I do want to create kind of a broom style canopy on it. So let's have a look now. I'll get rid of that stub from the last time I pruned the main trunk line. I'll show you a close-up of that. So right in here, I hope you can see it. There it is. So you can see I pruned it here. It died back down to here, this first branch. So this can be now pruned off because it's dry wood. You have to be very careful on birch. Any wound tends to die back and rot out the trunk. So I'm going to leave just a bit of the dead wood on there, and that'll be it. I don't want to take it right back to the living tissue because it's already healed that wound and I don't want to reopen it. So just here's flush, and I'll just come up a little bit to here, like that. And that, you know, hasn't opened the wound up, and it'll heal over that as the tree grows. I'll continue to prune the tree now. So these paper bark birches, they take a while to get a white trunk on them, especially when they're grown in a pot. If they're grown in the ground, they'll get a white trunk on them in about 3 to 5 years. But in a pot like this, the growth is so slow that it takes maybe 10 to 15 years before the trunk starts turning white. That's what I've read anyway, and that's what I've seen so far on these trees. So I'm going to start with some of these lower branches, pruning them back. I'm trying to keep as much ramification as I can, but I'll prune them back like that. And I'll come around here to this lowest branch, just take the tip off like that, work my way up, taking more tips off. This will help keep the trees more compact. You'll have more branch selection for the future. Okay, so that's got it pretty well pruned back, except for this strong branch coming out here. I'll prune it back to here and here. And another one coming off here. Prune the tip off. And there's a tip here I can prune back. I think that's about it. Yeah, so that's pruning all the new growth back. It's got it a little more compact. When it grows again, it'll have more branches, more to choose from in the future when I do, you know, a more detailed styling to the tree, picking what branches I want to keep and removing the others. But always trying to manage the growth so I don't have to make big cuts, because they're dangerous on a birch. It'll rot back. Okay, so that can go back on the bench. I was happy to get some of those smaller trees pruned back today. I still have lots more trees to prune. Tomorrow I think I'm going to bring out the Portulacaria afroforest and prune it back. So that'll be an exciting video, getting it pruned up once again. And that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.